Hi, I'm David King, the editor and associate publisher of The Collaborative, and I'm joined today by John Russell Cring, who is going to be joining The Collaborative as a film columnist, and obviously...
I'm here to collaborate with The Collaborative.
Yeah, we're going to collaborate live.
Okay, nice, nice. I'm very, very happy to be part of the Graybeard Club. You and me, Cring and King, Cring and King.
You know, my wife says I should get rid of it, but I dig it. You know, it's my only chance to look distinguished. So
Absolutely. I have this theory that when it comes to filmmakers, there are basically two varieties. You have your kind of geeky, smart, nerdy type, and you have your demented Santa Claus. So if you think about it, like Francis Ford Coppola is a demented Santa Claus. You know, Stanley Kubrick, demented Santa Claus. I think we know what Steven Spielberg is and Wes Anderson.
Yeah. Well, you know, I just finished the the new documentary about The Other Side of the Wind.
Oh, yeah.
Orson Welles.
Yeah, how was that?
The documentary was neat. I haven't gotten through the film itself.
Through the film.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'm sure Orson would really appreciate. So you haven't gotten through the film yet. That was my Orson Welles. I don't know. The only Orson Welles I can really think of is from The Muppet Show.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That was part of the documentary as well, and I forgot about it.
Oh, really?
Yep.
When he was in the Muppet movie?
Yeah, it was a clip, but it was, it was out of context.
You do know what Orson Welles' last job was, don't you?
No, was that the Transformers?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
He
yeah,
was. He was. Oh my God.
Optimus Prime.
Yeah. No. Not the Optimus Prime. The planet Unicron.
Yeah.
Oh man, you just set your geek credentials right there. You named him.
I was taken to see that movie when I was a young person because that was my favorite.
That one
thing.
will mess you up.
Exactly, it traumatized me. Optimus Prime dies. Not to spoil, spoiler alert.
At the very beginning of the film, they're like, okay, all these beloved characters, they're dropping them in like hot boiling. It's just like
And I think my second movie was. Let me see if I can get this right. It was a Hulk Hogan movie, but it was the one where there's extreme violence, and I think there's even a rape scene. And
what?
Yeah, and so I left that screaming and crying. I don't mean to. I'm not trying to disparage my parents, but that was also traumatizing.
Yeah, I actually one of the first films I ever went to. I grew up, and my dad was like a pastor, and so it was a Christian drive-in movie, right?
Oh boy.
So I was like, oh, okay. So the movie was basically this, like a guy on a motorcycle, and he dies and he goes to hell. And I'm like, what in God's name is this? And it was just all about the horrible, horrible things that happened to him in hell.
Oh man. That would stick with me, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was basically a live action version of the Transformers movie. You know what it was. That dude kind of looked like Unicron, and the whole thing. I don't know.
Well, it's funny because we were just talking before this started about you're looking to finance a new project.
Yes.
And I was just reminded. Because of that documentary of sort of the hell that Orson Welles was going through, and this sort of statement he made, he was given this Lifetime Achievement Award in the movie, and then he used it as a sort of like a selling point for his new film, and he showed some of it.
Okay.
And essentially, the scene from the film was a guy trying to sell his soul to get money from Hollywood.
Okay.
And it was an FU to Hollywood, so he didn't get his money.
Right.
But from what you were saying, it sounds
very
like
Francis Farmer moment right there. Ah, to you. Yeah. I'm, when you're making movies, you're always in a position, every single film. I mean, we all wish we could have like a Deborah Hill kind of situation where, with John Carpenter, she, produced and made all of his movies, but it doesn't necessarily work out that way.
Right.
And every single film, you're kind of finding the next person, that wants to be involved with you, who wants to be involved with the film. And this one's a little bit of a bigger production, more like, $100,000 or something like that. I've already got some great people here from Schenectady that are involved in the movie, but you're just trying to find just that 2 or 3 other people. So if you want to get involved in the movie, talk to John Russell Cring on Facebook.
But I find it interesting because obviously Darcy, your last film, we were just talking about this as well. I explored this sort of seedy, darker side of life,
Right.
But it seems a little bit more personal in some ways. In this, and I might be wrong because the movie doesn't exist yet. But your next project is, it deals with politics,
Right. A little bit of kind of where the country is right now.
right?
The idea of, when we go on, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and, you're sitting down with, grandpa or grandma or your uncles and that type of thing, and the subject of where the country is right now, there's likely that there could be a lot of conflict. And this film kind of explores that in a cool way, in something that everybody sort of understands, which is sort of being trapped together and having to find a way to deal with each other.
Right.
So imagine something like Cloverfield, but without any slimy things or something like that.
Well, lots of slimy things. But just, they're in
slimy
Washington.
things. Yeah, we shouldn't talk about Donald Trump that way.
Well, yeah, but with that, I mean, I know you've had an extremely busy last few months.
Yes.
And you were showing Darcy.
Yeah, we were showing Darcy at Film Columbia and at the High Falls Women's Film Festival, and then at the Capitol Cinema Cultural Exchange, we did a film lab for the movie I was just talking about, This Perfect Union. So that was cool because it was kind of like they bring in experts. People who have a lot of experience. Like one of the guys that's involved with the film is someone I met last year. His name is Brad Robinson, and he is AD for the place, pardon me, Blue Valentine. And, yeah, exactly, right. And, and he does stuff with Woody Allen, and he just did Widows, which is coming out. And he's a guy who just really has been tied in with very, very major projects. He also has done like several Woody Allen's films. So here's a guy who looks at Woody Allen scripts and goes, I don't think so, I don't think so, I don't think so. And he's getting a chance to look at your script and saying, I don't think so, I don't think so, I don't think so. And that's awesome, because, he has, that sort of that level of experience. And as a creative producer, he's kind of come through and, we've done 3 different versions of the script kind of based on the things that he said. So, that's the kind of thing that the Cinema Cultural Exchange, Northeastern Filmmakers Lab is what it's called. It's great for people that are, developing the project, because Sundance has something like that,
right.
But not a lot of people know that that's something that exists here too.
Well, I mean, that's something your column, your first column for us, which isn't available yet, but soon will be.
Yes.
Gets into the sort of what we have to offer here
Yes.
as a film community, what's been offered elsewhere, and sort of how to do things right to really pool more of a collective effort. But I find it as a writer and working with young writers that the best thing for me, even being an aged 37 tomorrow.
Happy birthday, David.
I had to think of it. If it wasn't recent, I might not have come up with it. But, it's still getting your work bounced off other folks who work on the medium and can tell you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and subjecting yourself to useful criticism. And it's something that folks, I think, are hesitant to, and maybe in some ways even more hesitant to embrace in this sort of social media, be your own brand, don't forget what work you're doing, just be a saleable presence. And I feel like, young writers and young filmmakers are less inclined, but I also wonder, just getting to the question here, is how much, obviously that sounds like a great opportunity, but how much opportunity is there locally to have share your work as a filmmaker and your scripts and get feedback from folks? Is there a good community?
Well, I mean, there's some great organizations like Upstate Independence, which meets on a monthly basis. I've met a lot of people. We've gotten, a lot of work through doing editing work and that type of thing. We have a film coming out that I co-directed with Mary Paley, who had done The Neighborhood That Disappeared, which was the documentary about Empire State Plaza. A lot of people don't know that movie made more money for WMHT than any project that they'd ever shown before.
Well, I mean, it caused a lot of excitement in my general circle, just because I know so many people who were impacted, and even folks outside where, Rockefeller and all of that. It really did have a long reach.
Well, this next one is about her father, Bob Paley, who was the photographer for the Knickerbocker News between 1949 and 1973. So it's a great period of time, So we met her through some people and through that organization. That's really great. There's Youth FX, of course, which is a tremendous organization.
They're all in there, just won the Sundance grant.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. There's a lot happening here. What we're starting to develop, sort of slowly, is some place that you can sort of discover all of that. And I think that things like the collaborative are really, really important, because what you have is sort of all of these little kind of stars out here on their own, and we need to connect them. They need to make a shape in the sky so that people know, filmmaking, is happening here. How about that for I just came up with that. That's pretty cool. So you're gonna be the Big Dipper of the Capital Region.
Thank you.
At least I didn't say Little Dipper. Okay, I wouldn't do that before your birthday.
Send us the invoice for the branding.
Yeah, exactly. No, man, but I mean that's the thing, is that when you start to sort of be known for something. I lived in Nashville, Tennessee for a very, very long time. And everything they do kind of centers around music, country music, which actually kind of made it difficult to make films, because the question was always, well, what does this have to do with music? Because we're music. And so that was a way that, something that I had to kind of break out of. And actually one of the reasons that I came up here. And I think that the Capital Region, the Hudson Valley is sort of, figured out, or Atlanta, and there are some other places that independent art, independent film is something that is very marketable and very usable, and it's a great way to draw people to your community. And I think that bringing all these organizations together, the Collaborative, Youth FX, UI, the Capital Cinema Culture Exchange, bringing them all together kind of under one dome, if you will, is a great way to kind of announce to this community that, hey, things are happening.
So Darcy's still obviously being seen.
Darcy's still going out into film festivals. It was just on one of those online film festivals, which is fun, because you can actually watch the movie and you don't have to be at this particular moment at this particular time. It's still going out there where it's at places like the American Film Market, and we're looking to find distribution for it. And I mean, that's the thing about making a movie. It's like you got to put this kid through college. You got to find a home for him. You got to find a job for him. Yeah. So it's sometimes making the movie is the easiest part.
And so with this Perfect Union in the pipeline,
yes.
You're looking for funding. Are you still? I mean, does that? Naive question, but does this come before finding all the talent in the film, or are you?
I actually did it a little bit differently this time. I have found some pretty cool people already to be associated with the film, and I'm using that to sort of, show people, hey, this already has, a guy from Hannah, Montana, that is involved in the film, or, somebody from, this television show Awkward, or things like that, to try to, find the funding. Honestly, there is no magic bullet on how to get your movie made. But that's kind of the way that it worked out this time. And, we'll see what happens. I'm really hoping to see this movie get made in 2019.
And then, so you were at the we were talking about your film. Darcy won an award for creative design.
Yeah, it was cool. The movies won like a lot of different kinds of awards at different festivals, which, I guess we did something right. Yeah, it won like Best Ensemble, Best Actress, Best Script. But this, at the High Falls Film Festival, they had, believe it or not, an art direction award, because very recently in Rochester, a woman who had been the art director for Black Swan and Hedwig and the Angry Inch and a whole bunch of other great films she had passed on. And so they had an inaugural award in her honor as the art director. And our film won for Sally Del Castillo, who had done the art direction for Darcy, which is, if you see the movie, it's all these hotel rooms. It's about this girl whose parents run this kind of no-tell motel. And the idea, that we always wanted to communicate was that kind of behind every door, there was a different world. And so she did a great job of taking sort of very beautiful but generic hotel rooms at this Catskill Motor Lodge and turning it into, the 9 circles of hell. It's 9, right? Or is it 7?
9.
Yeah,
it's 9.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Dante fan here.
Yeah,
but,
thank you.
But you were... we were talking about this because of Catskill, because I grew up near there, and it's certainly a changing presence. But It was just interesting, the story that you have about working in this seedy motel outside of Catskill that you produced it in, and sort of the juxtaposition there of this hotel you have to make seedy and this very idyllic, beautiful Hudson Valley town.
Oh yeah.
Do you enjoy filming locally? What's your preference to find
this area has everything. I mean, we already, most people know that it can double for New York City, but it can double for the Midwest,
right.
It pretty much, the only thing we don't have is an ocean. And, I'm sure we could go up to Amsterdam, and, throw some water around or something. I don't know. But it really is so scenic, but it also has, some roughness to it, and it has some age and some quality. And you think about all the movies that have been made here, like, Ironweed or, The Time Machine or things like that. The architecture really speaks to a lot of people, and so you can it could feel like Brooklyn today, or it could be Brooklyn in 1912, depending on what street you were on.
Yeah.
And that's a fabulous thing for a filmmaker, because another thing about this area is it's incredibly film friendly. You don't have a lot of, rules and a lot of permits and things like that. And even the city itself is really willing to work with you. If you go down to New York City and you're trying to shut down a street, or you're trying to get the police involved, or God forbid you're trying to use a police car or something like that, it is a nightmare. It is because they really are not interested. They kind of put up with their filmmaking now, because it's, they're New York City. They can take it or they can leave it. But up here, it is a dream compared to almost anywhere else.
I grew up in the Hudson Valley, as I mentioned, in Athens for a while, and Ironweed, as you mentioned, and
right.
Two Jakes, and they the Stewart House is this ancient hotel
right.
down there that they filmed a bunch in, and that was all ever anything and people talked about in the town was that this once happened there, and then. I think it was the Paul Newman flick they shot in
Nobody's
Hudson.
Fool?
I think so,
right.
with Melanie Griffith.
Yes, Melanie Griffith, Nobody's Fool with Bruce Willis. Yep. Oh, that's a good movie too.
That was that energized Hudson for a brief time then, and then
yes.
Just as I was leaving for college, I think it was that War of the Worlds, the Spielberg version,
right.
took over
exactly.
Athens, and
right.
There was talk that Athens was going to become this huge thing, and restaurants are built, and
right.
it changed the character of the town. But now it is quite a now the
that whole Field of Dreams thing really kind of effed with people's heads.
Yes.
They were like, if we build it, they will come. Well, maybe, the Magic baseball stadium, but not everything. You can't just build something and then expect, all of this work. What you really have to do is you have to nurture what already exists.
Right.
That is the way to create a movement. Take like the French Impressionists. They all became each other's fans. They would share each other's work. They had their own little moment, and then the rest of the world discovered them. And that's what we have to do. As filmmakers, Seattle was the same way. You had all these fanzines and all of these, ways that, music was getting out there between all of these different people. So things like the collaborative are incredibly important, and we cannot lose publishing. Physical publishing to where, people can not just find it online, but they can actually, pick it up when they're at Proctor's. And, I loved all the free papers, Metroland and, the Alt and, all of these, because I was like, what's happening this month?
That's exactly how I got interested in alt weeklies as a kid was, that, and, got interested in journalism, I should say, was picking them up to find out what.
And it's a different thing than a newspaper,
yeah.
like the art section of a newspaper, because you could say things and show things that, it's not necessarily going to appeal to Mom Pa Kettle, and you want to be able to, speak to, your and my generation and younger.
Right.
So I'm very excited about, what you have going here. How is the collaborative going to be different than the alt in your view?
Well, it is much more focused on the arts and the process. And I mean, we are doing there will be larger, cultural and investigative stories, but they will also keep in mind more the region than immediate breaking news.
Right.
And the longer story, but we are really dedicated to the process and capturing how things are created locally and bringing everyone together. So, besides, this host of columnists who we are hoping to introduce everyone to, on this podcast, discussing their craft. For example, I was along with an artist doing a mural for a few nights, and captured how it all came together and what it might mean to the community. And
excellent.
We really hope to be involved in the creative process, or not involved, but at least watching and seeing things come together and telling the stories. And as I mentioned before, I was in. Earlier this week, I was in Catskill with Joe Mama Nitzberg, who was the creative director for Geffen and Arista Records, and worked on Hole and Eminem and Outkast, put together these packages. Right. And now he's an artist who lives locally, and there's a lot more folks like that who are coming into the area who I think should be introduced to more folks, not because they're necessarily famous, but because they have the sort of credentials and ability to work with folks and give them the tips that, and to explore Catskill and, explore places like Catskill or Glen, to the north, Glens Falls, that are suddenly coming to life with arts.
When we were at the Capitol Cinema Culture Exchange, they had Stephen Lang come in, from Avatar and Manhunter and Tombstone, which I didn't even realize that was him from Tombstone, man.
Well, who was he in Tombstone?
He was Ike Clanton.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that was a great part, but he's unrecognizable in that role.
Yeah.
But he was incredible. He was just asking tons of questions to all the filmmakers, and he lives in Kinderhook.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
He's just right there.
That movie's infinitely quotable. So.
Oh my God. That's one of the most quotable movies, man.
That's amazing.
Manhunter is one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, the fact that, that he almost got his, well, what is it? I'll staple your eyes open unless you read this.
Oh, on that
Tom Noonan, man. I love him. I could just sit and talk film all day with you.
Oh, I'd appreciate it. Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll have you back too.
Oh, I'd love to, man. Absolutely.
Discuss new columns or new projects. Absolutely.
We've always got something new. Check out at the Writers Institute on the 16th, the free screening of More Than Words, the photography of Bob Paley. That's going to be it's a project we've worked on for about 2 years with Mary Paley, and it is turned out really brilliantly. Richard Lovrich is one of the guys that is interviewed in it, who's a great friend of us, and also Bill Kennedy from Ironweed. All kinds of very cool people are in this movie.
Yeah, local treasures.
Lots
and
of
perhaps
local
larger
treasures.
than-
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming, and I hope to talk to you soon.
That's right. Don't get rid of that gray, man. All right,
I'm
because
keeping
then
it.
I'll have to. I'll have to if you do. All right.
I promise.
All right.